The shocking truth behind Volkswagen's dark legacy. A history never told. In the eerie shadows of the automotive world, a chilling truth lurks, a truth that could change everything we thought we knew about one of the biggest car manufacturers in history. What if I told you that behind their sleek cars and catchy marketing slogans lies a twisted legacy filled with deception, betrayal, and scandal? Buckle up, because this ride is about to get bumpy. Volkswagen, the brand we trust, has a dark secret tightly wrapped in its past, and it's time to peel back the layers. Did you know that their very beginnings are tied to a chilling mandate from none other than Adolf Hitler? Yes, the iconic Beetle was touted as the people's car, designed to serve a purpose much darker than mere transportation. It was part of a regime's larger plan, a cog in a gruesome machine of war and propaganda that reshaped history. But the strange facts don't just stop there. Whispers echo through the halls of history, suggesting that the company's ties with the Nazi regime were not merely superficial. Reports hint at unethical testing done on unwitting individuals during World War II, a grim reality that casts a long, dark shadow over the brand's shining image. Imagine those who were sacrificed on the cruel altar of progress, an uncomfortable thought that forces us to confront terrifying truths. Yet, as we sift through these unspeakable horrors, a feeling creeps in. Could it be that the sins of the past have bled into the present? You might be wondering what really happened during those fateful years. How has Volkswagen managed to maintain its popularity despite the skeletons hidden deep in their closet? More importantly, what secrets are still hidden, awaiting discovery? And why do those in power keep burying the truth? It's enough to grip your chest and make your heart race. Hey! Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the pieces start to jerkily fall together, we edge closer to the truth. The faintest trace of a cover-up begins to surface, like oily stains on a sparkling car's surface. The secrets are hidden away, tucked under layers of corporate gloss and public relations smiles. It leaves you to wonder, how deep does this rabbit hole go? As the night grows darker, the questions grow louder, reverberating in the minds of those willing to listen. Are we ready to uncover what lies beneath the shiny veneer? Will the truth shatter the trust we've placed in a brand that has driven generations? The answers lurk, tantalizingly close, waiting to be unveiled. Just as the clock struck midnight, a storm rolled in, stirring the air thick with tension and uncertainty. The sound of raindrops pounding against the window felt like a warning. Inside, the glow of computer screens illuminated concerned faces. Investigators had dug up fragments of a history that refused to stay buried. Eric, a lead researcher, leaned back in his chair, staring at the documents spread out before him. The leaked files from a declassified government archive hinted at something even darker than expected. They spoke of unethical experiments conducted on factory workers, people who believed they were simply signing up for a job. Instead, they became part of a horrifying narrative, one that would shake the very foundation of the industry. What in the world were they thinking? Nora, a fellow investigator, whispered, her voice trembling as she flipped through pages filled with accounts of individual suffering and corporate denial. These people were used, manipulated. It's disgusting. The chilling realization swept over them. What had begun as a mission to uncover the historical truth about Volkswagen had transformed into a moral imperative. Lurking behind the inconspicuous VW badge lay an abyss of human rights violations, and they were on the verge of exposing it to the world as they pressed deeper. A piece caught Eric's eye. An anonymous whistleblower had left a note in the files. "Look for the doctor in the shadows," it read. Who was this doctor? What secrets could they hold? The clue hinted at a figure who had escaped scrutiny, someone who might still have connections to the company. With a surge of adrenaline, Eric motioned for the team to focus. "We need to find this doctor," he commanded, feeling the weight of history on their shoulders. They had to connect the dots before time ran out. If they weren't careful, powerful forces might come crashing down. Eager to protect the insidious legacy as rain battered the windows like a relentless adversary, Eric felt a knot tighten in his stomach. They had stumbled upon something significant, yet the shadows loomed ever larger around them. In the distance, a thunderclap echoed, reverberating like a death knell. Suddenly, the office door swung open. A figure stepped in, drenched from the storm. It was Max, their contact within Volkswagen. Fear etched across his face. "You need to stop looking," he breathed, his eyes darting nervously. "You're digging too deep." "What do you mean?" Nora demanded, her heart racing. Max glanced outside, as if sensing the eyes of the company on him. "I can't say much. They track everything. If they find out Eric took a step forward," desperation setting in. "We need to know the truth. Who is this doctor?" Max hesitated, then muttered, "He's the one who decided who lived and who died in those tests. You might not want to hear where he is now." The words hung like a thick fog in the air, freezing the moment. Fear coiled in the pit of their stomachs. Were they ready to embark on this treacherous journey, knowing it could lead to dire consequences? As Max hesitated, the storm outside swelled, mirroring the tumult inside the office. They stood on the edge, teetering between revelation and peril. Would they choose to plunge into the darkness, or step back into the safety of the shadows? Just then, Eric's phone buzzed, lighting up the darkness. "Are you still there?" A voice crackled, one they hadn't expected to hear again. "I have information that will change everything, but it comes at a price." He glanced at his teammates, uncertainty swirling in the air around them. Suddenly, the path ahead seemed more precarious than ever. What price would they pay for the truth? And who could they trust? In that stormy night, they faced a choice that would define their lives forever. Would they brave the storm and uncover the blood-stained legacy of Volkswagen? Or would they turn back, leaving shadows to protect their secrets? The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Eric's hands trembled ever so slightly as he answered the call. "What do you mean a price?" His voice was firm, but inside, panic surged like the storm outside. "Meet me at the old factory. Midnight. Come alone." The line went dead before Eric could respond. The glow of the computer screens flickered, mirroring their unease. "What was that about?" Nora snapped, her eyes narrowing with dread. "It sounds like we're going to find out who this doctor is and what he really did," Eric said, his gut twisting at the thought. "But it also means I might have to go without you." "No way," Max interjected, stepping closer. "It's too dangerous. If they're watching you as closely as I think, you could end up in serious trouble." His gaze was steady, laced with concern. Nora crossed her arms defiantly. "We've come this far. We're in this together. You're not doing this without us." Eric took a deep breath. He knew she was right, but the weight of their discovery blurred his judgment. "We don't know if this is a trap," he warned. "If the company knows we're onto them, they might not just cover their tracks. They might cover us." Max's eyes flitted toward the door. "I can help you, but we have to be smart about this." The wind howled outside, rattling the windows. Eric felt the pulse of unease quickening his heart. Every second ticking away was a reminder that time was not on their side. A plan formed in his mind. "All right, tomorrow night we'll all go. If it's legitimate, we'll stick together. But we keep a low profile until then. No more digging until we know what we're up against." Max nodded, still glancing outside like a hunted animal. "We need to move fast. The moment you start asking questions, they will come looking." The storm raged on, masking the tension heavy in the air. As they tentatively dispersed, Eric sat back down at his desk, his mind racing. What could this doctor know? Was he still connected to the monstrosity he had created? The files scattered around him felt more alive than ever, whispering stories of sorrow and betrayal that demanded to be told. That night, sleep eluded Eric. The past echoed through the walls, voices of the silenced workers haunting him, begging for justice. Then a realization hit him like a bolt of lightning. What if this doctor was hiding something even more sinister? The next day, shadows lurked around the office, filling him with unease. Voices hushed as he walked by, eyes darting away too quickly. It was as if the very walls carried secrets that buzzed with danger. As evening approached, Eric and Nora met in the back of the office, their minds racing with possibilities. "We have to prepare," he urged, adrenaline igniting his thoughts. "Whatever information we uncover, we need to be ready for the fallout." Nora grabbed a stack of files, determination in her eyes. "We're doing this. They're not going to silence us." Just as they began sorting through the troubling data, the lights went out, plunging the room into darkness. A loud crash echoed from the lobby, followed by the sound of hurried footsteps. "What was that?" Nora asked, panic rising anew. Eric motioned for silence, straining to listen over the pounding of his heart. The footsteps halted abruptly. "We're not alone," he whispered, dread pooling in the pit of his stomach. Suddenly, the door burst open, casting a shadow against the faint glow of the emergency lights flickering on. A figure stepped inside, breath visible in the cool air, and all they could see were a pair of frantic eyes staring right at them. "I'm here to warn you," the figure gasped. But before they could continue, a cold voice resonated from the darkness beyond the doorway. "You are making a grave mistake." With that, the tension snapped. What had they stumbled into? Was the truth buried so deep that it could cost them more than they were willing to give? And as the storm outside raged on, they braced for the unknown, ready to confront whatever lay in wait for them on the edge of a night that threatened to swallow them whole. What was this warning about, and who lurked in the shadows ready to strike? The figure in the doorway stepped into the dim light, revealing a disheveled man, his face pale and eyes wild. "Please, you have to listen to me," he urged, his breath hitching with each word. "You're in serious danger. They know you're poking around." Eric and Nora exchanged glances, the air crackling with fear. "Who are you?" Eric demanded, trying to keep his voice steady despite the turmoil churning in his gut. "I'm someone who used to work for them," he gasped, raking a hand through his tangled hair. "A lab assistant. I saw things that shouldn't have happened. It's not just a price they ask for your curiosity. They want stop at anything." Nora stepped forward, skepticism etched on her face. "What do you know about the doctor? Who is he?" The man hesitated, glancing back at the shadowy hallway from which he had emerged. "Dr. Hargrove, he was involved in everything," he confessed, voice dropping to a near whisper. "Experiments, cover-ups, the whole nightmare. And I'm telling you, if he thinks you're onto him, he will." A loud bang echoed from outside, cutting off his warning. They all flinched as the door slammed shut, seemingly of its own accord. The wind howled, drowning out the sound of their quickening breaths. "Fools so eager for the truth." The cold voice from earlier echoed again, now closer. Shadows twitched along the walls, and Eric's heart raced. "Get behind me," he urged, positioning himself protectively in front of Nora. The warning had turned into a dark, tangible threat, and now the air felt electric with impending violence. "We can't just stand here," Max yelled from the corner, eyes darting. "We have to find a way out." But before any of them could react, the lights flickered violently, then went dark again. Eric strained to see, every sense heightened, adrenaline coursing through his veins. He could hear the faint rustle of clothes and the quick intake of breath behind him. Nora was terrified. "Quick, to the back," he urged, leading them instinctively toward the emergency exit. But the figure flailed with panic, stumbling backward. "No, you can't go out there. They'll all be waiting." "Who will?" Eric shouted, desperate for answers. The man clutched his head, looking as if he was on the verge of breaking. "They'll find you. You need to get somewhere safe." Just then, another figure appeared at the doorway, this one more imposing, a silhouette that towered over the others. "I told you, you're making a grave mistake." Time froze as dread washed over Eric. He moved instinctively toward the exit, pushing the others ahead. "Run. We have to get out." But the warning had come too late. The room erupted with chaos as the newcomer lunged forward, grabbing the lab assistant by the collar and yanking him back. You should have known better than to meddle. Nora screamed, the sound piercing the thick air. Eric felt a knot in his chest as he turned to help, but more figures crowded the door, blocking their escape. Shadows danced menacingly, and the once familiar office now seemed like a death trap. "We need a distraction," Max shouted, grabbing a nearby chair. Before anyone could stop him, he hurled it at the wall, crashing it in a shower of splintered wood. The cacophony startled the figures, giving them a precious moment to slip away. "Now!" Eric shouted, propelling Nora and the lab assistant toward the heavy rear door. "Go!" As they made a break for it, the sounds of chaos filled the air, the smashing glass, the rough sounds of bodies hitting the floor, and shouts that echoed in his ears. Eric felt the weight of the situation press down on him. They were exposed, vulnerable. They barreled through the exit into the cold, rain-soaked night. Heart pounding, Eric glanced back one last time, dread gnawing at him. Had they finally crossed a line they couldn't return from? Pulling the lab assistant with them, he sprinted toward the shadows of the alley, deep into the unknown. With danger clawing at their heels, they could be anywhere now. But could they trust this man who had thrust himself into their lives? Or would he lead them deeper into a trap they couldn't escape? As they rushed into the storm, the reality of their journey loomed ahead, answers that could set them free or bind them in chains. And with the darkness closing in, one thing became clear. The chase had begun. What other secrets did this doctor hold? And would they be able to uncover them before it was too late? The rain pounded against the pavement as they stumbled deeper into the alley. The cold seeped into Eric's bones, mixing with fear as they pushed their luck further from the office. His heart raced, hammering in his chest like a frantic alarm. What had they just escaped? The darkness felt alive, clutching at their heels as the echoes of their chaos shimmered in the storm's roar. "Who are you?" Eric demanded, glancing back at the man they had rescued. The lab assistant looked even more frazzled, his face a mask of fear and desperation as he shook rain from his hair. I'm Tobias. I swear, I wasn't trying to drag you into this mess," he stammered, hands wringing nervously. I had to warn you." Nora shot Eric a look loaded with disbelief. "Why should we trust him?" "Because I'd rather face these monsters with you than alone," Tobias replied, his voice trembling like a leaf. "Once they get a whiff of your investigation, they won't rest until you're silenced. I've seen what they're capable of." Thunder rumbled overhead, echoing the turbulence within Eric. "So what do we do now?" "We need to go off the grid. For now. We can't use our phones or anything easily traceable. Trust me, they're always watching." Tobias paused, glancing back toward where they had escaped. "They'll send people after us." Nora shuddered, her grip tightening on Eric's arm. "And how do we know you won't lead us into a trap?" "Because I didn't want to get caught either." The lab assistant's eyes welled up with panic. "I just wanted to help. My life was destroyed by that damn doctor." The mention of Dr. Hargrove sent a wave of unease rippling through Eric. "What did you see? What are we dealing with here?" Tobias hesitated, swallowing as though the truth itself burned in his throat. "They were experimenting on people. Sickening stuff. I didn't know until it was too late." He took a deep breath, urgency flooding his voice. "I saw them transform lives, ruin families. They were like puppets, all in the name of science." Nora's face paled, horror dawning in her eyes as she took a step back. "What kind of experiments?" "Genetic manipulation. Things that shouldn't be allowed under any circumstances," Tobias whispered, glancing around the alley nervously, his tone lowering as if the walls might listen. "Those people, they were made to forget anything before the lab. Like shadows with lives erased." That revelation hung in the air like smoke from a fire, acrid and stifling. Eric felt a chill, grappling with the implications. "So what's our play? How do we fight against something like that?" Tobias looked around, eyes darting in desperation. "We need to find Dr. Hargrove's lab. It's south, the only place we can gather evidence and maybe save whoever is still trapped there." "Is that even safe?" Nora asked. "Safe? Of course not," Tobias barked, panic lacing his tone. But sitting here waiting for them to find us is worse. It's now or never, and I'm in too deep already. The streetlights flickered as they stood huddled under the cold rain, weighed down by it all. Eric's chest tightened as his mind raced, weighing choices against consequences. Could they trust this broken man? Or was he just another pawn in a twisted game? The distant rumble of thunder felt like a countdown. "Let us go," Eric finally said, his voice steadier than he felt. "But we need a plan. This ends tonight." With renewed determination, they plunged into the shadows, leaving behind the echoes of the chaos they had escaped. Each step forward felt like walking a tightrope above a chasm of uncertainty, every sound threatening to rip the thin veil of safety away. And as they sprinted into the night, a lingering question loomed, heavy as the clouds overhead. Could they confront the monstrous truth about Dr. Hargrove before their own lives became the next forgotten casualty in his twisted experiment? The alley twisted like a maze, dark and suffocating as they made their way deeper into the unknown. The rain slashed down, a relentless curtain that masked their every move. Eric pressed on, heart racing, haunted by the fear that every shadow might be hiding something dreadful. He glanced sideways at Tobias, who walked close, his face illuminated by the sporadic flicker of streetlights above. "Just keep moving," Eric said, his voice urgent but low, like a whisper in the storm. "We're running out of time." Nora kept her gaze fixed ahead. "Why didn't you report it?" She shot at Tobias. "All this what you saw at the lab. Why not go to the police?" Tobias faced her, his expression raw with regret. "Because no one would have believed me. Not when the doctor has connections everywhere. They just dismiss it as a conspiracy theory. I had to save myself first." "Great. So now we're left to deal with the fallout," Nora muttered under her breath, frustration bubbling beneath her fear. Just then, the distant sound of footsteps echoed behind them, quickening their pulse. Eric turned, scanning the features of the alley, the damp brick walls shimmering in the rain like broken glass. "We need to pick up the pace." They broke into a run, the chill of the water mixing with the heat of adrenaline coursing through their veins. Eric led the way, pushing through the narrow passages, trying to memorize their turns. Each footfall felt like an anchor, drawing them deeper into a place they might never escape. The footsteps grew closer, a heavy beat that matched the cadence of Eric's heart. "They're coming," he shouted, eyes wide, energy spiraling. "Where do we go?" Tobias gasped, panting heavily, his panic contagious. "Anywhere but here," Eric snapped, desperation fueling his words. The rain intensified, creating a chaotic symphony as it thundered on metal awnings and concrete, drowning out their movements. They burst out into a dimly lit street. The heavy fog swirled around them, obscuring their vision even more. He could see the outline of buildings, a distant light flickering on the corner. "Over there," Eric pointed. "We can hide in that shop." They darted toward the light, urgency in their steps. The door creaked as they pushed inside, the scent of damp wood and old paper wrapping around them. The shop was cluttered yet cozy, filled with shelves of odds and ends, a small sanctuary from the storm. Nora pressed her back to the door, listening intently. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. A muffled voice floated through the darkness, sickly sweet and full of authority. "You think they could have gone this way, Tobias? You think they'd be foolish enough?" Eric's face paled as he realized it was Dr. Hargrove's voice, slicing through the silence like a knife. "We've got to get out of here," he hissed, panic straining his voice. "They'll find us. We can't just rush out," Tobias said, trembling. "That's what they're expecting. We need a plan." Nora's heart raced, the walls seeming to close in around them. Maybe if we can gather evidence here. Notes, files, anything. Something we can use against him." Eric nodded, but his gut twisted at the idea. How will we find anything without getting caught? Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Tobias breathed deeply, gathering resolve. "We can stay here out of sight and just listen." Suddenly, a loud noise echoed from the back of the shop, the sound of something being knocked over. They froze, Anthony pulling Nora closer to shield her. The door creaked softly behind them as if someone was trying to open it. The tension was palpable, and just then, footsteps echoed louder, advancing toward the flickering light. "You can't hide from me, Tobias," Dr. Hargrove's voice boomed. Eric's mind raced as he weighed their options. Their moment of truth was fast approaching. What lay behind that door? Would it mean freedom or the end of them all? "Let us go," he whispered urgently, and they moved toward the back of the store, adrenaline pumping in their veins. But time was running short. Could they navigate through the unknown before the monsters in the dark closed in on them? Would they uncover the truth or bury themselves deeper in danger? The back of the shop was a dimly lit corridor, cluttered with stacked boxes and forgotten items. Eric led the way, his heart thundering with a mix of terror and determination. Each step felt critical, as if the ground might swallow them whole if they paused too long. "Over there," Tobias hissed, pointing to a small door at the end of the corridor. It was slightly ajar, a sliver of darkness beckoning them forward. Nora hesitated, her instincts screaming at her to flee, yet the promise of answers outweighed her fear. "What if there's nothing in there?" she whispered. "What if we're wasting time?" "We have to try," Eric said, steeling himself. He pushed the door open and stepped inside. The space was cramped and cluttered, stacked high with papers and old equipment. The air was stale, thick with dust that danced in the shafts of light filtering through the grime-encrusted windows. Tobias stepped in after him, scanning the room. If Hargrove keeps things here, they could expose everything. "We might finally have what we need. Just be quick," Nora urged. She was still gripping the doorframe, half keeping watch and half preparing to bolt. Eric moved to a nearby table heaped with folders. He flipped through them in a frenzy, driven by urgency. Names, dates, scribbled drafts of reports, every page a potential lifeline. "There's gotta be something." Suddenly, a heavy thud echoed from the shop's main area. Their eyes widened as they exchanged nervous glances. "They're in," Nora gasped. "What do we do?" The muffled tones of Dr. Hargrove and his men grew louder, their voices seeping into the small space like poison. "Split up," Eric urged. "We'll cover more ground that way. Just don't get caught." Without discussing it further, they moved into action. Eric dove into a stack of folders, while Tobias rummaged around an old metal filing cabinet, yanking open drawers that groaned in protest. Nora hesitated, then started tapping on an old computer, its screen flickering to life with signs of ancient files. Come on," she muttered, fingers flying across the keyboard. Eric found a stack labeled Project Aurora. Each document within painted a picture of dark experiments, of a society that had sacrificed ethics at the altar of progress. His stomach churned reading through graphs that indicated not only human trials but alterations made to memory and behavior. "This is it. This is why Hargrove is after us." The door to the room creaked ominously, causing all three to freeze mid-movement. "Where are they?" Dr. Hargrove's voice slithered through, void of patience. "You think they can hide in there?" A deep, gravelly voice answered. "We'll find them." Panic surged through Eric's veins as he glanced back at Nora. "We have to hide." They scrambled to the far corner as the door swung open, light spilling into the room while shadows crept closer. Heart racing, Eric kept his breathing low, terrified that a misstep would expose them. The men filed in, searching through the chaos. "They must have been here," Dr. Hargrove fumed. "Start tearing this place apart." Tobias clutched Eric's arm, eyes wide with fear. What if they find the files? Eric felt a chill. If they discovered the truth, it could mean their doom. But then again, what if that truth could change everything? Just as he thought this, Nora's muffled voice emerged. "I found something." "What?" Eric mouthed, heart racing. Her eyes widened, hands shaking as she waved a document. But before she could speak, the front door of the shop burst open with a crash. The trio's world tilted again, and fear slipped into every crevice of their minds as more footsteps approached. They had no way out, nothing but silence to shield them from the storm brewing just outside. Now, their very survival hinged on a decision they hadn't yet made, a choice that could unveil a truth too horrifying to comprehend. Would they escape, or would the storm swallow them whole? As Eric listened to the chaos unfolding just a few feet away, dread gripped him with icy fingers. What terrible force was about to be unleashed? Silence engulfed the cramped room, wrapping around Eric, Nora, and Tobias like a suffocating blanket. Each thud of approaching footsteps sent tremors through their bodies, the fear coiling tighter in their stomachs. The weight of the unknown pressed down as they crouched in the shadows, barely breathing, hearts thundering in sync like a warped drum. "What do we do?" Nora whispered, voice barely a thread in the cacophony around them. "Just hold still," Eric hissed, willing the words through clenched teeth. "If they don't see us, we might be able to slip out." But slipping out felt impossible now. The air was thick with tension and a growing sense of doom. A sudden crash echoed from the main area, shattering a nearby shelf. Papers fluttered to the floor like trapped birds, a reminder that they were trespassing in a realm that didn't want them found. Dr. Hargrove's voice sliced through the chaos, sharp and cutting. "They have to be here somewhere. Look under everything. We find them now, we find the truth." The three exchanged looks, terror sparking in their eyes. The terrifying thought of being caught by Hargrove's men crept in like an unwelcome shadow. Everything they risked, everything they sacrificed hinged on remaining unseen. Maybe we could give them a distraction?" Tobias suggested, but his voice trembled, uncertainty flickering across his face. "I don't think we can afford to risk it," Eric replied. Desperation clawed at him, urging him to consider options that might put them in harm's way. "Focus on the files, Nora. What did you find?" Nora's fingers trembled as she held up the document. It was a faded report, edges crinkled and yellowed with age. "It's a summary of Project Aurora, Eric. It's not just human trials. It's worse. It talks about leveraging fear, controlling people." Her voice faltered, the implications heavy. "They wanted to erase memory and implant new thoughts. That's insane," Tobias exclaimed, his eyes dancing with disbelief. "They actually thought they could play God?" "It's not just thought, Tobias," Eric said, his own mind racing. "It's about control. Hargrove can't let this out. If people knew, we have to get this to the authorities," Nora insisted, a glimmer of defiance sparking in her gaze. "The truth has to come out." "No," Eric countered, fear rising like bile in his throat. "What if they find out who we are first? We'd be dead in minutes." The door rattled violently as someone began to pound against it. "They're hiding. We know you're in there," Hargrove shouted, voice drenched in fury. The trio stiffened, caught in the crosshairs of their choices. The pounding intensified, as if the men on the other side would burst through any second. "We don't have much time," Eric urged. "If we don't move now, we'll never get out of here. We need a plan." In that moment, Nora's gaze shifted to the window, a grimy broken pane surrounded by dust and darkness. "What if we climb out? It's a risk, but it could lead us outside?" Eric's heart raced as he gauged the position of the door, the urgency of the moment propelling him. "It's better than waiting here to be caught," he said. Tobias grabbed Nora's arm, his face pale with fear. "Go. I'll keep them busy." "No way," Eric protested. "We can't leave you. Just go." Tobias shouted back, fear stripping away the last hints of his strength. "I can handle this." With the echo of Hargrove's threats growing closer, Eric reached for Nora, resolute. "We can't lose anyone else. We stick together." They scrambled towards the window, adrenaline singing in their veins. Just as they got close enough to the pane, they heard the doorknob rattle violently, as if teetering on the edge of surrendering. "Now!" Eric shouted, desperation in his voice. They pushed against the window, shards of glass crackling beneath their hands, shoving the curtain of darkness aside. They had no idea where the shadows would lead them, but there was no turning back now. The storm was rising, and there was no telling what awaited them outside. "What if we're getting into more trouble?" Nora panted, heart racing as they pushed through the jagged opening. Eric turned to her, eyes blazing with resolve. "The only way is forward. Together." As they crawled through the glass and into the unknown, a gunshot erupted from behind them, a stark reminder that danger was creeping too close for comfort. But outside, freedom or something darker awaited. What lay beyond was a world they weren't prepared to face. Yet they had no choice but to confront it. What secrets awaited on this new path? Would they emerge unscathed or become pawns in a game larger than themselves? The night air hit them like a slap, cold and biting as they slipped through the broken window. Grit and dust swirled around them, the chill creeping beneath their skin as they stumbled into the cramped alleyway outside. Shadows clung to the walls, dark and oppressive, swallowing their forms. Which way? Nora gasped, glancing back at the window they had just escaped. The echo of another gunshot reverberated through the silence, ricocheting off the brick buildings and only amplifying their fear. Left, Eric shouted, already darting in that direction. Adrenaline surged through him, burning away the thought of Hargrove and his men. They had to run. They had to survive. They dashed down the alley, a maze of garbage bins and scattered debris, trying to melt into the darkness. Each footstep felt like a drumbeat of danger. The distant sound of shouting trailed behind them, Hargrove's frantic commands piercing the night. Panic twisted inside Eric, but he forced himself to push forward. "Oh God," Nora breathed, glancing over her shoulder. "What if they catch us? What if Tobias is?" Her voice cracked, a raw edge of fear slicing through her words. "We can't think like that," Eric interrupted, clenching her hand tighter. "We need to find a place to hide, regroup, and figure this out." As they rounded a corner, the alley opened up into a dimly lit street. A flickering street lamp cast a weak glow over the cracked pavement, illuminating the ominous shapes that lurked in the distance. "Where do we go?" Nora whispered, eyes wide with fear. "Over there." Eric pointed to a rusted metal door at the far end of the street. It looked abandoned, an old storage latch hanging loosely. "Get inside. We might be able to lock it behind us." With hearts racing, they sprinted towards the door. Eric's fingers brushed against the cold metal handle. With a twist, they were enveloped in darkness. The dank air inside stank of mold and abandonment. They stumbled further in, collapsing against a wall, breathless and shaking. "What now?" Nora said, panic threading her voice, echoing off the bare walls. Eric took a moment to steady himself, drawing in a ragged breath. "We need to look for a way out, a phone or something," he murmured, his mind racing. "If we can warn someone, maybe we can stop Hargrove." As they scanned the room, shadows danced around them. Metal shelves loomed like specters, corners filled with dust and debris. A flicker of movement caught Eric's eye, sending a jolt of fear racing through him. He turned, squinting into the depths of the darkness. "Did you see that?" he whispered, tense. "I didn't see anything," Nora replied, her voice trembling. But before Eric could respond, a harsh light surged through a crack in the door, illuminating a figure outside. It was a silhouette, tall and menacing, blocking their only escape. "Found you," a low voice growled, sending chills down Eric's spine. Eric's mind raced, fast as the pulse hammering in his ears. They were trapped, nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. A gut-wrenching realization hit him: if they didn't act fast, they might not come out of this alive. In that moment, Nora gasped, "Eric, we have to," but before she could finish, the door burst open, and the figure surged forward, flooding the room with light and chaos. "Get down," Eric yelled, instinctively pushing Nora aside just as the figure lunged. The fight or flight kicked in. This was not just about escaping anymore. They would have to fight and fight hard. Would they find the strength to stand up against the forces that wanted them silenced? Or would the truth remain buried forever? What else awaited them as they faced their relentless pursuer? The air crackled with tension, each breath a reminder of their peril. Eric stood protectively in front of Nora, heart racing, fists clenched. The figure from the doorway emerged, revealing Dr. Hargrove's cold, calculating gaze. Shadows pooled around him, silhouetted by the flickering light, transforming him into a monstrous puppet master. "You think you can just run away?" he sneered, his presence exuding a chilling confidence. "Get away from us," Eric shouted, adrenaline amplifying his voice. "You can't stop the truth." "What truth?" Hargrove's lips curled into a wicked smile. "That you're just pawns in a game too big for you?" The sincerity of his words hung in the air, blending seamlessly with the chaos, and Eric felt dread wash over him. Before he could respond, Hargrove lunged forward. Eric reacted on instinct, diving to the side as Hargrove crashed into an empty shelf, sending dust and old files flying. "Run, Nora!" he shouted, urgency thick in his tone. Nora sprinted for the back, glancing anxiously behind her, but Hargrove was quick, retrieving himself swiftly. He bellowed, ordering his men to encircle them. "This ends now." The realization hit Eric like a freight train. They were cornered, nowhere to go. Panic surged, tightening around his chest. "We need to find a way out," he shouted, but with every passing moment, dread loomed closer. "This way." Tobias' voice cut through the chaos as he stumbled into the room, out of breath but alive, a glimmer of hope amid the swirling darkness. "The basement. We can escape through there." "Nora, go," Eric urged, propelling her toward the back hallway. They'd have to split up for the moment. Desperation fueled his movements as he grabbed Tobias, urging him along. "Stay close." The narrow corridor seemed endless, the shadows stretching and curling around them, whispering secrets of fear and betrayal. Panic settled in slightly, urging them faster. They stumbled blindly through the darkness. There was something exhilarating about the sheer adrenaline slamming against their bodies, mixed with the overwhelming instinct to survive. They reached a door marked staff only, and Todd flung it open, revealing a dark staircase leading down into the unknown. "Simon, hurry," Tobias urged, his voice edged with urgency. They raced down the stairs, the muted sounds of chaos echoing above them as they reached the bottom. A dim light flickered on, casting unnerving shadows against the concrete walls. They paused briefly, hearts hammering with the realization. They had left the madness behind, but for how long? "This way." Tobias pointed down another dimly lit corridor, lined with doors that appeared forgotten, remnants of experiments long since discarded. "We need to find a way to the main lab." But just then, the ground trembled as the door at the top of the stairs burst open. Hargrove's men pouring through like a flood, their voices shouting commands that echoed in Eric's ears. "They're right behind us," Eric cried out, dread pooling in his gut. With nary a moment to lose, they scampered down the corridor they had entered, fear eclipsing their judgment. This was no longer just a quest for truth. It was a fight for survival. Worse yet, the stakes had never felt higher. "This way." Tobias suddenly rushed toward an oversized door off to the left with a sign that read Experimentation Unit. They burst inside, shutting the heavy door behind them. Eric's breath came fast, pounding in his ears. They found themselves in a sterile lab, cold and clinical, the very essence of dread mirrored in the darkness of the last experiments. Scanning the room, Eric's eyes landed on a series of computers. "If we can find anything that connects the experiments to Hargrove, we can take it to the authorities. Or expose it to the world," Nora murmured, her expression filled with determination. "Let us get this out in the open." Tobias moved to grab a hard drive, fingers flying to extract critical information. Eric could hear shouting above, but he forced himself to focus. "Hurry! We don't have much time." The computer screens flickered, revealing dark traces of documents, screaming the secrets that had long been buried. His heart hammered in sync with the frantic clicks of the mouse. There's got to be something here. Then, a rush of triumph surged through him as he opened a file labeled Project Aurora. Human trials. The details were horrifying: names, dates, and accounts of pain trailing back to Hargrove himself. This was it. This could be the key. "I found something," Eric shouted, plunging into the darkness of the truth they were uncovering. But just then, the convinced grating of boots echoed back toward them. "They're coming." Nora's eyes widened with fear. "We have to go." "Copy everything," Eric urged, moving to grab the hard drive. Just as they finished, another echo of footsteps sent chills down his spine. "We're too exposed here," Tobias urged, panic rising once again. "We need to keep moving." In an instant, they bolted back to the door and held their breaths, hearts racing as Eric focused hard. "If we can make it to the exit, we'll have our evidence and a chance to fight." "Let us go," Nora whispered back, determined. With one final glance at the cold walls that had borne witness, they pushed through the door and sprinted back down the corridor, hoping against hope that the truth would light their path, shining through the chaos that had entangled them. This wasn't just about survival anymore. No, it was about justice, about making sure that no one else would fade into the shadows as they nearly had. As they moved, the chase wound into an uncertain night, a tempest of fury chasing them forward into the unknown, ready to face whatever awaited them. They emerged under the rain-soaked sky, breath catching in their chests, hope and despair colliding in a fierce struggle. The world outside felt different, altered by what they had seen and heard. But they were free, for now, and there was work to be done. Before them lay their next move, a crossroads of choices, alliances, and the truth that could either save lives or plunge them deeper into darkness. The storm may rage on, but they wouldn't let it take them. They would stand firm, thrive, and breathe life back into the shadows. And when it was all said and done, they would expose the truth for all to see. If you've made it this far, you need to subscribe now to catch the unfolding saga we've been weaving. Hit that red button, or risk missing out on the next thrilling installment. Smash that like button to show your support for more riveting stories like this. And I want to hear from you. Flood the comments section below with your thoughts and theories about how this nail-biter wraps up. Share your ideas and feelings. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends. Spread the word and help us unveil what lies behind the curtain, because together, we're unstoppable.